Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The hallmark of any authoritarian regime is politicized justice. Under that system, your opponents go to jail, your supporters can do whatever they want. And this reveals that the state exists not to serve the people who live in it, but to preserve itself and to crush all dissent. I hate to think we've reached a point anywhere near that here in the United States, because there's nothing worse than that, or scarier, or harder to fix. But in fact, we have reached that point. That's where we are. Yesterday, for example, a man leaped on stage at a campaign event and tried to stab Lee Zeldin. Zeldin's a sitting member of Congress. He's challenging the unelected incumbent Kathy Hochul in the governor's race in New York. So ordinarily, attempting to assassinate a federal office holder would be considered a big deal. But Lee Zeldin is a Republican, so it's not a big deal anymore. The man who tried to murder Lee Zeldin was released immediately with no bail. Less than 24 hours later, by contrast, former Trump advisor Steve Bannon was convicted of crimes that until recently were not crimes at all, for which he now faces a prison term of 2 years. Bannon has been declared guilty of something called contempt of Congress. That may strike you as an unintentionally hilarious term, since most of the time Congress invites our contempt. But the point is, this is a crime that Democrats are not convicted of, ever. Attorney General Eric Holder and IRS Executive Lois Lerner were once found to be in contempt of Congress, both of them, and for real crimes. In Holder's case, it was gun running in Mexico. In Lerner's case, it was targeting conservatives for audits. But neither one went to trial. Holder claimed executive privilege, which was enough, even after a judge ruled that executive privilege did not apply in Eric Holder's case. But it didn't matter. He walked. Lois Lerner cited the Fifth Amendment. It was as simple as that. Both of them today, Lerner and Holder, are free and richer than ever. But these standards do not apply to Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee, despite the fact he had literally nothing to do with January 6th. And we know that because he left the White House 3 years before it happened. But it didn't matter. He annoyed the wrong people, so he's going to jail. Now, this shouldn't surprise you, really, because we've been building toward this moment for some time. You might recall Greg Craig. That would be Barack Obama's former White House counsel. He was acquitted of violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, back in 2019. He'd been working for Ukraine. Now, at almost exactly the same moment, Paul Manafort, who hired Greg Craig to work on Ukraine, was convicted of violating the same law, FARA, on the same account for Ukraine. How does that work exactly? It seems like a double standard. And indeed, it is a double standard, but it's a consistent standard. We've seen it again and again and again. Former Clinton attorney Michael Sussman was just acquitted by a D.C. jury of lying to the FBI. That happened in May. The theory was that really, who knows what Michael Sussman told the FBI about non-existent Russian servers in Trump Tower? Okay. As long as we're using that theory, does it work for everyone? Well, it didn't work for George Papadopoulos. Didn't work for Michael Flynn. On the other hand, neither one of those guys had a key card to FBI headquarters, like Michael Sussman did. And that came in handy, that relationship. But Mike Flynn didn't have that relationship. His life was destroyed. Why? Because of handwritten notes by Peter Strzok, who you can now see on MSNBC, about their conversation in the White House about Russian sanctions. Get him to lie, the head of counterintelligence at the FBI wrote to Strzok, speaking of Flynn. So on the basis of that, the setup, they hounded Mike Flynn into poverty. The same thing happened to George Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos' crime? Not being as forthcoming as possible about his job status with the Trump campaign. Unpaid. That's literally what the DOJ told the court in a filing. Quote, the defendant did not provide substantial assistance. Oh, that's the standard. So Papadopoulos went to prison. So did the 69-year-old grandmother recently, called Pam Hemphill. She's currently serving a 2-month sentence in federal prison. Why? Because she, quote, paraded in the Capitol on January 6th. Didn't hurt anyone. She's got breast cancer. She's going to prison. A judge in Washington had no problem issuing that sentence. At exactly the same moment, the U.S. attorney for D.C. dropped all charges against Stephen Colbert's production crew for doing the same thing, but worse. So Stephen Colbert's team may have lied to federal authorities when they said they'd stay out of restricted areas. But they didn't lie to federal authorities in quite the same way, apparently. And of course, they had the right politics. Unlike Roger Stone. Roger Stone got a 3-year prison sentence. He had a SWAT team show up at his house at dawn with a CNN crew in tow, tipped off by the Justice Department for maximum humiliation. What was his crime? No one can remember because there wasn't one. So if you've been paying any attention at all to our justice system, particularly under Merrick Garland, you had some sense of where this was going. It was moving toward the authoritarian system we now have, where justice is an illusion. Offend the people in charge, get punished. Support the people in charge, do whatever you want. Still, even knowing that, today's conviction of Steve Bannon is an escalation. There was not even a pretense in his trial that the prosecution of Steve Bannon was lawful. So the Constitution requires equal protection. Heard that phrase? That means that selective prosecution is not allowed. It's unconstitutional. If you don't try one person for a crime, you don't get to charge another person for the same crime, because that's selective. It's political. But under Merrick Garland, that's the new rule. Offend us, go to jail. At his trial, Steve Bannon was not permitted to say that his attorneys had counseled him against bending the knee of the January 6th committee. He couldn't even say that. Nor was he allowed to argue that his subpoena was legally invalid. Why couldn't he argue that? All Steve Bannon was allowed to do was shut up. He had to remain silent and await his conviction, and that's what he did. Outside of federal court today, Steve Bannon pointed out that he subpoenaed members of the January 6th committee to testify at his trial. Why can't you face your accusers? Isn't that guaranteed under our system? Not in this case. Because having the January 6th committee members show up would expose them to the one thing they cannot tolerate, which is cross-examination. So they refused. Watch.
I want to thank the jury for the effort they did, the judge, particularly the court administration here, everybody. I only have one disappointment, and that is the gutless members of that show trial committee. The J6 committee didn't have the guts to come down here and testify in open court.
Did you expect Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger to show up? They don't have to testify. They don't have to do anything they don't want to do. They can just send their enemies to jail. So their behavior is really not that surprising, because the January 6th committee itself does not allow cross-examination during its hearings. You may have noticed this. It doesn't even allow the identification of many witnesses. They do it anonymously. How do you define show trial? That's how you define show trial. So these are not hearings in any recognizable sense. This is a show trial. That is exactly what it is. That's not overstatement. The committee did not allow the cross-examination of former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson, for example, even after she made claims that were insane. They made no sense. She claimed that Donald Trump tried to carjack his own presidential limo and drive it to the Capitol. So if she'd been cross-examined, which in any hearing is permitted under the Western system of justice, not the woke system of justice that Liz Cheney has brought us, but under the conventional system that all of us grew up with, you would have a cross-examination, and someone might have pointed out that the Secret Service agents in that limo denied her account. But if you were watching on MSNBC or CNN, which have taken this propaganda live and then bragged about it, we're doing the bidding of the state. We're so proud. We're calling it journalism. We've refused to do that because we have dignity, and we're not liars, unlike them. But if you're watching this on those channels, you would have no idea that the Secret Service denied this account. The Secret Service was never contacted by Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger before the testimony. And that's bizarre. Because if the committee wanted to get to the truth of the Trump grabbed the wheel of the limo allegation, they would have talked to people who were there, but they didn't. Republicans, if they'd been allowed to cross-examine, if they demanded to cross-examine, we're not defending Republicans. They've fallen down on the job. That's an understatement. But if someone had been allowed to ask adult questions of the witness, we might have learned what CNN viewers will never know, and that's that Hutchinson reportedly tried to get a job at Mar-a-Lago afterward. But none of that was allowed, because it's pure propaganda. This has been going on for months now. Last night, the January 6th committee put on testimony from an anonymous official. Can you imagine an anonymous official claiming that Secret Service agents assigned to Mike Pence were using their radios to tell their families goodbye, like they were on the deck of the Titanic, because they assumed they would die in the Capitol because some guy in Viking horns on mushrooms was spinning in rounded circles and talking about peace. They were so afraid. Watch this nonsense.
The members of the VP detail at this time were starting to fear for their own lives. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of very personal calls over the radio. So it was disturbing. I don't like talking about it, but there were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth. It was getting, for whatever the reason was on the ground, the VP detail thought that this was about to get very ugly.
It's just absolutely shameful that the other channels played this crap without pushing back in even the mildest way. Oh, it's news. It's not news. And your job in journalism is to hold the powerful accountable. It's not to do their bidding or put their lies on TV unedited in prime time, which is what every other channel has done except Fox News, and we are proud of that. Well, you should be ashamed. Yeah, you should be ashamed. But there was no cross-examination allowed in any of this because this committee would not allow it. No rebuttal of any kind. So, of course, there was no inquiry as to why a Capitol Hill police officer with a documented history of recklessly mishandling firearms shot an unarmed woman in the neck, an Air Force veteran. He shot her in the neck. Why? You're not allowed to ask. What happened to those thousands of hours of surveillance footage? Why can't we see those? Nah. You're not allowed even to ask why we're not allowed to see them. We can't know why police are on video letting people into the Capitol complex on January 6th. Why is that? Not allowed to ask. And this is going to continue. As Adam Kinzinger said, this charade, which really does corrode the heart of our system, this will continue all the way till the midterms, because as Kinzinger, who's dumb enough to say the quiet part out loud, admitted, this is a political exercise. Watch.
This investigation is not winding down. We may be towards the end of this tranche of hearings. We may have more hearings in the future, and the investigation is still ongoing. So we're getting to the bottom of what we need to know.
Yeah, okay. We're getting to the bottom. Actually, you're preventing legitimate, obvious questions from being asked. And just in point of fact, no matter how long these hearings go on, they could go on forever, and Adam Kinzinger will still be a sad, tormented, tiny man with a miserable personal life. So, that's some comfort. But the prosecutors here, working for Kinzinger and Cheney and the rest of this committee, just like the school boards and the teachers' unions last year, worked in tandem with the Justice Department to punish the enemies of the Democratic Party. What is that? Well, it's the single greatest threat to the rule of law in the history of the United States. That's true. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson Tonight.